Welcome to another episode of my podcast, That's Fine With Me. Today we're going to be talking about stereotypes and where do they come from. I want to start with 4 different categories where, in my opinion, or not only my opinion, but other sources are claiming stereotypes are coming from. The first one and only is family. When you get into some small celebration with your relatives and parents, well, most of the time, these people, they're going to try to talk about some politics, or they're going to talk about different nations, and they're going to discuss news. And this is the main source where the first stereotypes are forming, because you actually can hear some information that you don't really think is true or not, but you're kind of part of this discussion and you can't escape it, at least when you're not up to maybe 5 years old or maybe even 6 years old, up until the point where you go to school. And school is another source of stereotypes, especially about communities. When teachers were asked what did they think about certain communities as Asians, white people, and Black, they said that Asians most of the time are A students. They're very pliable, they're hard workers, and they're really kind, as well as white people were considered to be materialistic and selfish, and Black people were considered to be stubborn and aggressive. And we're going to talk and break everything down. Where did this come from? But then let's talk about education. A lot of things came from history, and a lot of things came from different propagandas that were shown through media and TV. That's why we can actually combine education and media, because media one of the biggest source of stereotypes, as well as in the middle of 20th century, when there was a Second World War and United States actually had the war against Japan. And when the Second World War was over and a lot of immigrants from Japan were staying in United States, government had decided that they're going to form some education camps where they're going to re-educate Japanese, and then they were going to integrate them into society, American society. And they wanted to make sure that Japanese were not only threatening white people, white nation, but they wanted to make sure that they would perform under regulations of the government. And unfortunately, white people that had all this propaganda all over TV that, yeah, Japans are smart, they're hard workers, they're compliable, they're diligent. That's why you can rely on them. And white community, they didn't really care that not every single Asian is Japanese. That's why they got everyone under the same community. Either it's a person from China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, and many more other Asian countries. So they actually formed one stereotype against a whole bunch of nationalities. And that was the main reason why it started with Japanese, but unfortunately it happened with different communities of, let's say, Asian side. That is the main reason why government, they portrayed Asians as very kind and hard workers. But at the same time, Black community, they were fighting for their rights. And that was the main reason why Black community was protesting, and that was the main reason why they were considered to be aggressive and stubborn. And media, again, helped with propaganda that every Black person is aggressive and stubborn just because they want to fight for their equal rights. And the government tried to show different communities from different angles, that one community, Asian community, is actually really good and they're kind and hard workers, as well as Black community is aggressive and stubborn. And that in this way, two communities, they were against each other because of propaganda and some stereotypes that were formed by the government. And I guess the majority of government was with white people. That is the main reason why white people are considered to be selfish and materialistic, because they actually forced different communities to not hate each other, but dislike each other, I guess. And then let's talk about some problem that the stereotypes bring to the society. And you would say, okay, what is so bad if an Asian person considered to be smart? What is so bad about this? It is bad in a way that if some person from Asian community does not know a certain point, doesn't know something, well, he's studying or she's studying and wants to get some help, most of the time teachers would neglect the student because they think that he's smart enough to figure this out by him or herself. And that is the main reason why they're not paying attention to Asian students, because they're considered to be smart. And sometimes Asian student can be put in a group that the level of knowledge has to be higher than in other groups. And that is the main reason why they're suffering again, because they're not that good at this point in some certain program material, but they're getting in a higher level group just because they're considered to be smart, not because they are smarter in this field. And that is the main reason why they cannot get enough sources outside of school as well, because the program is not focusing on smart kids. It's focusing on kids that are struggling and they need help. And Asians, they're not considered to be struggling students. That is the main reason why stereotypes are quite dangerous sometimes, and they can lead to some real problems in the society. As well as some Black student that would take an exam, he might actually get a little bit different result from someone who's checking his test than an Asian student, because he is in the forced, I guess, stereotype field that he's not as smart as, for example, an Asian student. Now, let's talk about stereotype itself. What is it? Stereotypes is a simplified generalization to describe the whole group or the whole community. And it can be negative stereotypes or positive. As a negative stereotype, white people cannot dance. And as for positive stereotype, Black people can dance. Every Black person can dance. And this is a generalization. Of course, we understand that not every single white person can dance, but there are pretty much a lot of people that can. As well as Black people, not every single Black person can dance, but it's shown that, yeah, every single Black person can dance and sing because they have like beautiful voices, but it's too much to think that every single person should have the same standard. And how did it actually form? Again, through media, when there were certain films and jokes, like Eddie Murphy said that every Black person can dance, and it was really well received, and that's why the stereotype was formed that every Black person can dance. And of course, we can talk about propaganda of the government, and we cannot differentiate, unfortunately, information that we get from media to reality, as well as YouTube, TikTok, social media. Whenever we watch some videos that get viral, and sometimes there's misleading or false information in these videos, but people consider this to be true just because it got viral and because they saw this through media. And for example, if we're talking about education point again, when Russia, not even Russia, back then it was Soviet Union and the United States, they were in position of Cold War, and it was, again, middle 20th century. A lot of films, and you probably know it, in Hollywood were filmed about the war or problem or gangs, some, issues with Russians, and Americans, they would always fight Russians. Every evil gang is Russian gang in Hollywood movies of the 20th century. And we still see a lot of this narrative in the movies, as well as China. For now, United States really wanted to be friends with China, so you can see in Hollywood movies that they're always friends with China and they try to cooperate. And in Transformers, not only Transformers, but a lot of different movies, when they were combining their forces and fighting against, most of the time, Russians. Okay, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, let's talk about a little bit different thing. So that was the main reason why Americans thought that every Russian was a part of a gang, that we had bears walking around the streets. Though we do have bears sometimes in some really wild regions where the forests are nearby, and maybe if they're hungry, but the same cases were found in the United States. So I don't really think it is good to point out that only Russia has bears over streets sometimes. And then balalaika and matryoshka. This is a symbol of Russia, but not every single Russian has balalaika and matryoshka. Believe it or not, I'm from Russia. I don't really have these things in my house. But honestly, we did have matryoshka, by the way. Someone gifted us this doll. It's just a small doll inside of a bigger doll, and bigger, and then it's just like a lot of different dolls. Okay, but again, the same happened with Russians when we had Cold War. We were shown some American comedies that were not really smart, and they had pretty much weird sense of humor, and a lot of things were shown like Americans, they're stupid, and that has become a stereotype in Russia that every American is stupid, though it's not right. Not every Russian is a part of a gang, and of course not every American is stupid, but these stereotypes, they're formed because they were based on some rivalry, I guess, between two huge countries. So let's talk a little bit about a different type of stereotype. When something is true, but then it forms false stereotypes. It is true that men are taller than women, and that is the main reason why in some cases when women see shorter guys, they think, oh, it's not okay, but because most of the time men are taller, and that's true, and they consider that these shorter guys, they would overcompensate, or they have a huge ego because they have some problem with their height. And that is a great example of how some true fact help in forming some stereotypes. But of course, not every short guy is overcompensating or has huge ego. The same way about Napoleon. If you know about Napoleon, he tried to conquer Europe years ago, and he was short. I mean, the height of his was short, and everyone came to conclusion that every short guy wants to overcompensate and he has an ego. That's why no one really cares if someone like I don't know, Hitler tried to conquer Europe because he was probably the same height as most of those people. But whenever someone shorter tried to conquer Europe, it was like, oh, Napoleon, he tried to overcompensate and he had a huge ego. That is a stereotype that is formed. Okay, and then let's talk about rappers as well as, yeah, we do know, and it's true, that Black community came up with rap and they actually started the whole genre, I'd say. But then the stereotype formed that only Black people can rap and they are the only capable of doing that. But then Eminem, he has become one of the greatest rappers, and a lot of Black rappers, they admit the fact that, well, he's white but he's rapping better than we do. And maybe that is the main reason why we can see that there's still, again, some diversity. If it was formed in one community, it doesn't mean that someone from other communities is not capable of doing the same thing. But stereotypes, it's really hard to get through this, let's say, niche. And Eminem, he, if I'm mistaken, struggled a lot when he tried to become popular and to show his talent because he was white, and in most of the time that was a deal breaker, up until the point where his record got to his producer and he gave him a shot, and well, he blew up. And that is the reason why the narrative has shifted a little bit, but still, I guess a lot of the times Black artists are considered to be more talented than other community, I guess, representatives in rap and field. And I guess that is it. I guess we tried to talk about rap. I try to break everything down. This podcast wasn't super long, which is good, I guess, sometimes. And I guess it was really, really helpful. That is the main reason why I try to see outside of the box and try to act outside of the box, because not every single person is probably part of something that you think of him or her, and that is the main reason why you shouldn't act on your stereotypes. I love you all, guys, so much. I know I'm going to see you in my next podcast. That's fine with me. If you have any questions or stories to share, in the description box, I have my mail. You can share your stories. Till next time, bye-bye.